What is going on? It is Nate the Game Guy coming back with another video at hand, and today I want to talk to you guys about consoles that I believe are overlooked by collectors. Now, I've collected for lots of different consoles over the years. I've got games all the way from the 2600 all the way up to modern day consoles such as PS5, Nintendo Switch, Xbox Series X, all that wonderful stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, there are some consoles out there that I believe are pretty overlooked where, they've got some pretty solid libraries, there's some games on there that are worth checking out, worth playing, and quite frankly, I think these consoles should get some more love and attention by collectors. Now, of course, in this video, I'm not going to be ranking these consoles in any way, shape, or form. These are not the worst to best or the best to worst, which is the cheapest, the highest, none of that, right? These are just consoles that I personally enjoy collecting for, that I believe that are overlooked by collectors as a whole. So, without further ado, let's dive right into this video subject, take a look at some consoles that I believe are pretty overlooked by collectors as a whole, right after the intro. Alright, so I want to start this video off by talking about the PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 3 was a console that I was not a fan of when it first came out, but once it hit about late 2009, somewhere in 2010, that's when I began to do a 180 on the stance of the PlayStation 3. There are a ton of great games that were some big heavy hitters from back in the day. I'm talking about the Uncharted games, the Infamous games, the Killzone games, MotorStorm, Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. The PlayStation 3 had some pretty solid titles that were worth checking out, especially in the AAA department. And what's really nice about the PlayStation 3 is that there are some pretty solid niche titles on there too, especially if you're a fan of JRPGs. I'm talking about the Hyperdimension Neptunia series, Cross Edge, Trinity Universe, the Disgaea games. There are some pretty solid titles, whether you're looking for AAA or more niche titles. The PlayStation 3 certainly has you covered. And also what's really nice about it too is the PlayStation 3 does have better graphics than the Xbox 360. So if you do have a third-party title that you are playing, you're probably going to notice that there is a little bit of some improvement with the graphics than compared to the same game on the Xbox 360. Anyway, that's what I've noticed, me personally. Now, of course, I do realize that the argument can be made that if you want the best graphics overall, you're going to want to play on PC. But I think that is a completely different animal to look at than compared to collecting games as a whole. And I have to say, what I really like about the PlayStation 3 is the games are really cheap, so you won't struggle too much in finding some pretty solid titles that are worth checking out. Of course, there are some exceptions with the rarer titles, but overall, I feel like the PlayStation 3 is overlooked just because of how great of a library the console has to offer. So when it comes to some consoles that are overlooked by collectors, PlayStation 3 is definitely one of them that I think about. Now, another console that I think is very overlooked by collectors as a whole is the original Xbox. Now, with the original Xbox back in the day, that was the least played console of mine during the 6th generation. When it came to the 6th generation, I was mostly a GameCube guy, but of course I would dive into the realm of PlayStation 2. I didn't really fall in love with the original Xbox many years later once I started looking back on the library and realized, like, wow, how many great games there are on the original Xbox. Of course, some of the obvious titles that are worth talking about on the original Xbox are the Halo games, obviously, right? But of course, there are a ton of games on there that Microsoft just doesn't put any love and attention into these days. I'm talking about Blinx the Time Sweeper, Mech Assault, Voodoo Vince, and of course, if you want to talk about some exclusive titles as a whole, not made by Microsoft, but just great exclusive titles that were on the OG Xbox, Panzer Dragoon Orta, Jet Set Radio Future, those were some awesome games back during their day. Of course, just like the PlayStation 3, the original Xbox, you can easily find deals for the games. Of course, just like any other console, there's always going to be a couple rare games that are not really going to be cheap, but I would argue that the most part that the original Xbox, not only is it really cheap, but it has a fantastic library too. What's also really cool about the original Xbox is that out of the GameCube, the PlayStation 2, and the Sega Dreamcast from the 6th generation of gaming, the original Xbox has the best graphics out of all those consoles. So you will notice that if you play a game on the original Xbox, then compared to the PlayStation 2, you're going to have slightly better graphics. So that is a big plus for the original Xbox 2. Great console. I really love it. I may even go for a full set one day just because that's how much I like the original Xbox. But of course, that's just one more console I had to knock off on the list of consoles that I believe that are overlooked by collectors as a whole. Now, sticking to the theme of the Xbox brand, I have to talk about the Xbox 360. I've had a ton of great memories from the 360 back during its day, and me personally, this is the last Xbox console that I truly enjoyed. Of course, there were some games that I enjoyed on the Xbox One, but not nearly to the degree of the Xbox 360. The 360 was just in a whole other world of its own. Again, just like the other consoles mentioned, this is another cheap console where you can pick up a ton of games for really, really cheap. Ask me how I know, right? And there are just so many great games on this console. I just love it so much. Obviously, the elephants in the room, I'm talking about Halo, Gears of War, the Forza games, just so many great games on there too. And if you want to talk about some underrated titles on there as well, I'm talking about like Crackdown and Viva Pinata. And one video I do want to recommend to you guys, since I'm talking about 360 with you guys, is I have a video right here that you could check out where I talk about some underrated titles on the Xbox 360. I strongly recommend checking it out if you want to look for some awesome games that just didn't get enough love back during their time. But I will say, I really feel like this console is really overlooked by collectors just because there's just so many great games on here. I've had so many great memories on here. It just has a fantastic library of games. Plus, it's super cheap too. So, one more console knocked off on the list when it comes to consoles that are overlooked by collectors. Now, one console that I've really been enjoying collecting for lately is the Nintendo Wii. Yes, I'm very aware as to how much shovelware there is on this console. However, I would still argue that the amount of great games that are on this console just overshadow all the shovelware that is on the Wii. And lately, I've been discovering a lot of hidden gems on the Wii, some of which I have not played yet, but I'm very eager to try out. And once I get some experience under my belt as to just how awesome some of these games are after I'm done playing them, I will be making a video very soon talking about hidden gems that are on the Wii. However, in the meantime, I will recommend you guys this video right here where I do talk about some underrated exclusive titles on the Wii that are a total blast to play. And just like all the other consoles that I've been talking about in this video, this is another one that you can get a lot of great games for relatively cheap. Yes, I realize once you start dealing with the AAA exclusive published by Nintendo games, that's when the prices are going to go up. But I would still argue that you can still get a good deal on some really fun games on the Wii. And while I will say one thing I've noticed about collectors, especially collectors that are really big into Nintendo, where they'll collect for Nintendo 64, GameCube, Super Nintendo, I feel like the Wii is really overlooked when compared to some of those consoles. And I think the reason why is because of all the shovelware that's on the Wii. But of course, sticking to the theme of this video of overlooked consoles for collectors to check out, I really think the Wii is a console that should not be passed over just because there's still a ton of great games that are absolutely worth checking out. Now, one console I'm sure you guys are not expecting me to name drop in this video is PlayStation 4. That's right, I said it, the previous console generation of what we're dealing with right now. I personally was not a fan of the 8th generation. I just felt it just was not nearly as good as the 7th generation. I feel like the 7th generation was the last great era of video games. However, I really like the PlayStation 4 with its library of games, especially with the exclusive titles, and of course, you can easily find some great deals on these games. I think it is a phenomenal time to get started collecting for PlayStation 4 games, whether there's some games you just haven't tried yet, or just for whatever reason, you just haven't got a PlayStation 4. I think it is a great time to start collecting for PlayStation 4. And I will say that, yeah, PlayStation 4, when it comes to collecting and the library of games, is not as good as PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 and even PlayStation 3, right? But I would still argue that that library is pretty solid, especially when compared to Xbox One. That was my least favorite console out of the 8th generation of gaming. So many great games on the PlayStation 4. I'm talking about Infamous Second Son, Killzone, Shadowfall, among a few others as well. So I think if for whatever reason you've just overlooked the PlayStation 4, please do yourself a favor and reconsider checking it out, because there are some pretty good games on there that, I'm not gonna lie, I do enjoy quite a bit. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out my video. Please be sure to check out these videos here, and here. After all, I post a lot of content when it comes to game collecting tips, and other video game related subjects. So be sure to keep an eye out every Monday and Friday where I upload consistently, and I'll be seeing you guys next time.